Hey pal, I'm here today to talk about the books I got for Christmas. Now, I got 14 books. I haven't read these books, so obviously I don't know a ton about them. So I'm going to try and speed through this, and then hopefully, if you have read any of these books, you can, encourage me to read them. Or if you're interested in hearing me review them, you can tell me which ones you'd like me to prioritise. Okay, let's crack on. I got one actual book as a surprise for Christmas, which doesn't happen anymore because I used to give my mum and Johnny a wish list. I don't do that anymore because I'm trying to keep my TBR down, but my mum knew that I had just read Crow Lake by Mary Lawson for my Patreon book club, because she's part of my Patreon book club, and we both really enjoyed it. And I'd mentioned to my mum that I was 100% going to carry on reading Mary Lawson's books and that I was going to try and read them in order. So my mum picked me up Mary Lawson's next book, which is The Other Side of the Bridge. This is another amazing sounding family drama. I found Crow Lake so compulsively readable and unputdownable. So I'm actually off work for the next week, which I'm very happy about because it's been a very busy Christmas and New Year, and this week is much quieter. So I might pick this up this week because I feel like it's a book I'll really want to speed through. This is about two brothers who are very different. This woman enters their rural village and really shakes things up between them. So that's all I know. Then my mum and I went into Waterstone on the 27th of December because they had a half-price hardback sale, which is amazing. I went in 2021 and it wasn't that impressive, I didn't think. I picked up a couple of books, but this time round they had so many books that they had one or two copies left, and they were books I was so interested in. So I think I picked up 9 books. My mum very kindly treated me to all of these as an extra Christmas gift, which was very, very nice. And yeah, so there was 3 books I was 100% looking for, and I was super happy to find 2 of those 3, so I'll mention those first. The first one is How to Gut a Fish by Sheila Armstrong. This is a very shiny book, as you can see. This is a short story collection by a new Irish writer. I used to read lots of sort of fabulous, surreal or folklore-inspired novels and short stories, and then in more recent years I haven't really enjoyed that because I feel there can be a disconnect. But from my understanding, this collection of short stories is sort of on the line between reality and folklore. And I read the first couple of pages of this in a bookstore months ago and loved the writing style. So knew it was one I wanted to give a go. So I'm hoping I could really enjoy this one. The next book is in another short story collection. This is one I was looking for. I had this on my anticipated releases list for 2022, so I was very happy to pick it up. And that is The Very Colourful Rainbow by Lydia Conklin. This is a short story collection focused on trans, non-binary and queer voices, and it's supposed to be more sort of joyful and uplifting, which isn't something we often get in fiction or non-fiction about the queer community. And just some of these stories sound really interesting. I think the title story, this lesbian couple want one of their friends to be a sperm donor, and they sort of try and ply him with this very potent cocktail they call Rainbow. So yeah, that sounds really fun and interesting. Excited to read this one. I'm excited to read all of them. I'm going to say that loads. This next one, I recently listened to an audio and I really enjoyed it, and so I just wanted to own a physical copy because it's a book I'll probably reread, and that is Legends and Lattes by Travis Baldree. This is a sort of cosy fantasy. This book was originally self-published with a different cover, and it's now been traditionally published with this wonderful cover. But they kept the original artwork on the inside of the book, which I think is really beautiful. So I'm very happy to own this copy, and I'll definitely follow what this author brings out in the future. Then I had heard a few people mention this one. I thought it sounded amazing, and I looked. So my rule is that I don't usually buy books that my library has a copy of unless it's from an author I absolutely love and adore. And I'd looked and my library didn't have a copy. And sometimes I ask them to buy books, but I try not to do it all the time because then I'll just piss them off. So I hadn't asked them to buy this, but I thought it sounded fantastic. And that is At Certain Points We Touch by Lauren John Joseph. I haven't had many people talk about this one, but the people I have heard mention it said it was phenomenal. We're basically following our narrator who is walking home at 4 a.m. and they realise it's February the 29th, which is the birthday of this guy that they were deeply in love with. And then they basically start looking back 10 years to when they met him. And it says, which sounds really interesting, Their ensuing affair with its animal intensity and its toxic power play will initiate a dance of repulsion and attraction that will cross years, span continents, dragging countless victims and culminate in terrible betrayal. That sounds so dark and twisted and just really engrossing. So I'm not going to say it, but you know it. I'm excited to get to it. This next one was a bit of a mistake, okay, because I checked afterwards and my library does have a copy of it. But I was panicking, okay? There was loads of people around me. I had this big old stack of books I could barely carry anymore. And I didn't have an extra hand to get my phone out to check the library out to see if they had a copy. And I really like the sound of this one, so I don't regret picking it up. And that is Olga Dies Dreaming. Now, the weird thing about this is I've heard loads of people talk about this, but I still somehow didn't know what the premise was. I don't know how I missed that. But I read the blurb, I read the first page, really liked the sort of opening couple of paragraphs, and so I just thought, like, fuck it, I'm just going to pick it up. This opens in 2017 and we're following Olga, who is like a super successful upscale wedding planner, her brother, who is a local politician, and they have, I think, tried to hide their past because their mother was actually like a, what does it say? She was a young lord turned radical who abandoned her children to advance a militant political cause and left them to be raised by their grandmother. But she's come back into their life and sort of disrupts everything. And I just thought this sounded just like a rip-roaring read. So excited about that one. I've just said it again. This next one, my library does have a copy of, but I started to listen to an audio and was really enjoying it. But I knew that the physical copy was beautiful and it had lots of illustrations. And so I decided to wait to pick it up. And I'm sure I'm going to enjoy this because I really liked the first couple of chapters that I listened to. So yeah, I picked it up, and that is Gallant by V.E. Schwab. I haven't read any of her books, and I know she has so many out. So if I really enjoy this, I might go back and pick out some of her other books. But this is really beautiful. Has this gorgeous cover underneath the dust jacket. And then there's sections where it's like all just printed a bit differently. And I think there's some illustrations as well. From memory, this is about a young girl at a boarding school, sort of really gothic boarding school, who finds out that she's inherited like this house. But I think somebody in her family told her, I think her mother left her a letter telling her, whatever you do, never go back to the family home. But she does. So yeah, you follow what happens from there. And these last three I picked up in Waterstones. I was really shocked to find because they're all not published in the UK, so I guess one of the booksellers ordered them from the US, and they're all books I really wanted to get but hadn't got round to getting because it's a bit pricey to get books shipped over, so I snatched them up as soon as I saw them. The first one is Spear by Nicola Griffith. This is a beautiful book. This is a novella, and this is a retelling of the Arthurian legend, but from like a feminist perspective. I'm not sure what character from the Arthurian legend this is focused on, but yeah, I just thought it sounded really good and I want to read some of her books. So there is that. This next one is one that I kept coming back to all 2022, umming and ahhing about whether to buy it. Both this and the next one are available on Scribd on audio, but I just felt like they'd be books I'd rather read physically, so I'd always avoided listening to them on audio, and I'm just so happy to have a copy of each of them because they're really beautiful, and I just really want to read them, even though I haven't actually heard, I don't think I've seen like an actual like YouTube review for either of them. Let me know if you've seen one. The first one is Swimming Back to Trout River by Linda Ru Feng. This is a sort of mixture of things I love. It is a coming of age story about a young 10-year-old girl. She's being raised by her grandparents in a rural village in China. And her parents left her with her grandparents to start a new life in America, and promising they would one day come back to collect her. And her father has done that, but what she doesn't know is that her parents have actually separated and they're estranged. And I think a lot of that is to do with their sort of past in China. This is set during China's Cultural Revolution, and I really enjoy reading books set in that time period. So yeah, I think it sounds amazing. It has deckled edges, which I really like. I know a lot of people don't. I get it. It's difficult to turn the pages, but I turn them at the top and I do think they're beautiful. So yeah, hoping to love that one. And the next one is The Evening Hero by Marie Young-Ok Lee. In this, we follow a Korean-American man who is a really successful doctor, But it turns out that he's sort of been lying about his history in Korea to everybody, including his wife and his son. And when he finds out the hospital is going to close down, it sort of forces him to reconsider his whole life, and he has to decide whether to tell the truth about his past in Korea or whether to continue to sort of bury all of it. And yeah, it just sounds like it might be filled with secrets and complicated familial relationships, which are basically catnip for me. So there's that. And then as we were leaving Waterstones, my mum was looking for a few books that she didn't find. And she said to me, oh, do you know if it's also half price on the website? And I was like, oh, I'm pretty sure it isn't. Like, that would be too good. But anyway, I had a look and it was. So I thought, well, I'm going to look for the other book that I wanted, and I found it. The third book I was hunting for was another short story collection, and that is Hearts and Bones, Love Songs for Late Youth by Niamh Mulvey. This is another debut collection from another Irish writer. I absolutely love this cover, and I had this on my anticipated releases for last year, and I was convinced I'd see everybody talking about it, and that hasn't happened. I don't think I've seen a single person reviewing it. This is the bit that made me want to read this one. Quiet revolutions happen in living rooms, on riverbanks, in packed pubs and empty churches, and years later we wonder why we ever did the things we did. I think that sounds great. These stories are set between London and Ireland over the span of about 20 years. And yeah, hoping this could be a banger. And then this next one I was really surprised to see because I didn't know it was published in the UK, but it turns out it is. And that is Woman of Light by Khalif Jado Anstein. So I was planning to pre-order this because I loved her short story collection, Sabrina and Karina. And then I just started hearing not great advance reviews and continued to hear mixed reviews throughout the year. So I didn't pick it up. But when I saw they had it 50% off, I was like, do you know what? I really loved her short story collection. I really love the themes. This book sounds like it's exploring similar themes. And so I'm just going to take the risk. So the premise of this is we're following this woman called Luz, who starts to have visions of her ancestors. And so we follow all the women in her family throughout these different generations and all their stories, which is something I love. And I think she really fantastically focused on women and the power they have and the things they do for one another in her short story collection. I thought it was excellent. And it's set in 1930s Denver. It says, Luz begins to have visions that transport her to her indigenous homeland in the nearby Lost Territory. In the end, it is up to Luz to save her family stories from disappearing into oblivion. And it says it's a multi-generational Western saga. So I'm intrigued, but I'm not going in with like super high hopes because, like I said, heard mixed reviews. But I feel like it'd be unfair of me to not take the risk because her short story collection was so fantastic. So if you read this, let me know what your thoughts were on it. The last book I got in the half-price hardback sale is the only non-fiction, and that is The Interpreter's Daughter by Theresa Lim. I've never heard of this, but I really love the cover. I love memoirs and really want to try and read more of them this year. This is about a woman who, when her mother was about, that's Albus if you can hear that, scratching my armchair, Albus. When her mother is about to pass away, she gets a family photo reprinted and gives it to everybody left in the family. And the author looks at the photo and realises that there is a woman in the photo who turns out to be her great aunt Fanny, but her mother's never spoken about this woman and nobody in the family ever speaks about this woman. So she decides to basically investigate and find out why she's never met her great aunt and why nobody talks about her. And what she finds is that through detective work, serendipity and the kindness of strangers, she was guided to the fascinating, ordinary, extraordinary life of her great aunt and her world of sworn spinsters, ghost husbands and the working class feminists of 19th century South China. And I just think that sounds really intriguing. And when I had a look, this had really great reviews, so decided to take the risk. The last book I picked up, which was not in the hardback sale because it's a paperback, Hes the Street by Anne Petrie. This is the book club book for my Patreon book club for January, so I will be reading this one this month. I've wanted to read this for years because I've heard amazing things about it. This is published by Virago. It has the beautiful green spine, and this edition has a new introduction by Tiare Jones. I love her books. I'm really interested to see what she has to say in the introduction. And this is set in New York City in the 1940s in a crumbling tenement in Harlem. Lute Johnson is determined to build a new life for herself and her 8-year-old son, Bub. But then we follow her story. It says, in her struggle to earn money and raise her son amid the violence, poverty and racial dissonance of her surroundings, Lute is soon trapped. She's a woman alone, too good looking to be decent, with predators at every turn. I've heard amazing things about this book and this author's work in general, so I'm really excited to read this one and to chat to my patrons about it. So yeah, those are all the books I were gifted and picked up recently. I hope to read them all in the next couple of months, so let me know which ones you've read and if you enjoyed them. If you have any you'd like to hear me review sooner rather than later, and also let me know if you picked any books up in the last couple of weeks and what they are, because I'm very nosy and love to know what everyone else has as well. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.